So I think in today's world, we live in a world that is full of stories, the stories in the media, whether that be on TV or on social media, Netflix, etc. And there's of course stories in businesses as well, and we tell stories to educate, to inspire, to engage, to entertain. And the trouble with stories, of course, is that the narrative that's being told is often heavily influenced, and of course often biased in one direction or the other, and we're seeing a world of extremes at the moment. And I can't help but wonder what that narrative does and what those narratives are capable of doing in business. Erika Clegg, you are back again. Thank you. I appreciate you coming back to join us on Rewarding Relationships, because the last time we spoke, we were talking about your book, Junk Values, and the importance of values in business and the importance of nutritional values in a world where most values are not doing the job that they've been asked and set to do. So that's got me into this world of narrative and the stories that we tell and the importance of that. And of course, the biggest risk that if we're not telling the right story, someone else will plug that gap. And I just wanted to open that frame and get us talking about the world of narrative today. So Erika, thank you so much for coming back and welcome back to the show.
Thank you for inviting me back. So, stories.
Yes.
Now, here's the thing. So I spend a lot of time on trains. And one of the lovely things about going on a train is that it gives you time to really focus on a thing. And I've been writing something which started as an essay. I don't know what I'd do with an essay, but it was just to get the thoughts out of my head.
I love that, writing essays.
I know,
Yes.
it's like being back at school.
Yeah.
And then I was like, this is turning into a thesis. And then before I know, it's turning into, I don't know, something else, a thing. It might even be another book, who knows? But what started this was the need for principles in a narrative-driven age. And, there's so much stuff to unpick in that. But I'd say we have to start with a question. Because if you look at a story, it's a bit like looking at the source of funding.
Right.
If you are getting funding, or if something with which you are engaging is funded, it's very sensible to find out where that funding comes from and maybe go a few steps back, because often what looks like the source of the funding will be being funded itself. And funding is done for a reason. So people will fund things that further an objective that they have, and it might not be immediately obvious. It's exactly the same with stories. So when you hear a story, it is very sensible to find ways, and this is where we come back to principles. It is very sensible to find ways to unpick that story. One of the things is, where does it come from? What do they want? And just as with, so let's say you read something in a newspaper.
Yeah.
You could look, you could click down to the bottom of the page and you could find out there where their head office is and who their chief exec is. And you've got to go further back than that. So again, back to funding. Where does the funding come from? What are the objectives of the people who really are behind this newspaper? What are they trying to achieve by what I am reading here?
Yeah.
Then I will decide what I take out of this story. So I'm one of those people. I will going back to newspapers. I would always read, the Telegraph, the Times, the Guardian, because I wanted to be able to decide for myself where I felt the truth lay.
Yeah.
And so we're back to stories again. And of course, the purpose of principles is what your principles do. And we talked a lot last time about the fact that when you're clear about your principles, you articulated them, expressed them. And when you're facing a really tough decision, then you can literally read your principles and go, this one is going to help me make...
And they can act as that guide, that signpost, the manual, if you like. Can I come back to principles in a minute? And because you said the word objectives there a few times, objective. And I think that's actually really, really important, because if you think about the stories that we read, the stories that we tell, the stories that we absorb in every part of I'm going to call it the media world that we're in, because whether it's actual media or not, like we're in the attention economy and everyone's trying to grab it, there is a purpose for telling the story in the first place.
Yeah.
Even if that purpose, so the headline of a newspaper, its purpose is to get you to pick up that newspaper and consider buying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? The story that then follows is a version of said truth. We hope the truth.
Everyone hopes the explanation.
But then you've also said, you would read a number of newspapers to get the real truth.
Yes.
There's a version of the truth underneath the headline, which is the way of telling that story. And the purpose of that in, media world might be just to keep reading that newspaper and buy more copies of it, but equally to be taught and to be educated and become aware of whatever that story is.
Yeah.
in the business world, the purpose of stories is like, let's say, to sell. And I use that word, like, I suppose, slightly reluctantly, because I don't necessarily mean just selling the product or service. Like, I mean influencing the people that work there, the people that buy from you, the people that might fund you, the people that might invest in you, the next generation of employees of tomorrow. We are looking to influence, and we like to think that the sort of final part of that sentence is influence with integrity, and not for all businesses, we know that. Influencing with integrity requires stories. So the objective is influence, right? In the large degree, or like, what are the other objectives? I guess that's the question that could
Yeah.
be.
I mean, I've been unpicking this. I mean, one thing on influencers, if I may, which is a bit of a side note, but just is a stat I love. So I've been at a big gathering recently, and there was a lot of stuff about trust there.
Right.
And the woman who's the chief exec of Ipsos Mori was sharing some absolutely fascinating data. One of which, and there was a lot about trust in politics. So there was this thing that politicians have for quite some time been sitting right at the bottom of the trust scale. Now beneath them, influencers, 6%. It's the lowest trust score they've ever had. So that was fascinating.
Interesting.
Yeah,
6%.
really interesting. But really high up. And actually, let's talk about this for a while, and then we'll come back to stories. Chief executives and even higher up co-workers. And again, what I love to hear in these sessions it was during COVID that chief executives actually were able to develop a much stronger relationship with their people, because, we all went into communication, gather people together, desperately try and create a sense of belonging mode. And so people who never saw their chief exec probably wouldn't recognize them, apart from if they look on a poster who's, their face is on, was seeing their chief executive quite regularly because they were having Zoom meetings, team meetings, whatever, where the chief executive was speaking to them and they felt a sense of connection to them. So actually trust in chief executives, in companies, in co-workers, in a world where, and again, this is what we spent a lot of time on last time, where obviously institutions, politicians, big business, the super wealthy, media, all of these kind of things, trust is being lost.
Yeah.
What's rather lovely, and Edelman has called it the year of insularity, which is not all a good thing, because there's a little bit of, I will surround myself by the people I'm comfortable with, which is not entirely good. But what is good about it is people are feeling safe with their families, their communities, and the businesses in which they work, or the organizations in which they work.
Yeah.
So actually, let's say this is for business owners. This conversation we're having now is for people who are working in business.
Yeah.
It's an unparalleled opportunity to build on that trust, to work with that trust, I don't want to say capitalize because it sounds cynical, but to build around that sense of belonging.
Like, what is it?
It's belonging. It's having, and and the point is, it's not something that's been created. It's an organic thing. It's something that's happened purely because of actually what was a really difficult set of circumstances. A lot of different difficult sets of circumstances that suddenly we find, particularly in the SME world, we find we have come out of it stronger as families, as communities, as organizations. And that's wonderful, actually.
And so there's some fundamental truths in there that I think we often forget because they're so old. Like, they stand the test of time. Like community, belonging.
Yes.
Like, if Maslow was here now, he'd be saying, "See, I told you."
Exactly, because it's all right. And so down to what is the purpose of the narrative? Now, yes, isn't everything selling? Isn't a relationship, building a relationship with someone requires a little selling on both people's part, if you want to put it that way. Or you can say it's about, what is it? Stories. From the very beginning of time, but back to the days before we farmed, back to the days where we lived in a subsistence life, where actually we had time, and in that time we sat round fires together and we talked. Stories.
Yeah.
They're a bonding thing. And that is why, if you go back out to now, just let me finish on this one. If you go back out to now, the political factions which have the most power to convince are the ones at the further edges, because they have got the most powerful stories, because stories need a few things. Stories need an arc. So equilibrium, anti-equilibrium, equilibrium. They need a villain. They need a hero. And it's much easier to have that sort of arc disruption and also that hero villain narrative if you're sitting at polar opposites or something. It's very hard when you're all sitting pretty much comfortably in the middle, which most of our politicians have been since the mid-90s. So it is very old-fashioned, and yeah.
Well, it's old-fashioned is one way of putting it, but I think it's in a good way. Like I'd say
Yeah.
foundational.
Yes.
And so there's
It's real.
I had this image when you were talking about the bonding there and the telling stories around a campfire, right? So this kind of like, community where we told stories
Yeah.
to each other. And of course, one of the things that draws us into a story is the relatability.
Yes.
So if we can see ourselves or hear ourselves in that story,
Yes.
then we're more likely to lean into it. Equally, if we hear a story that we wanted to be part of, we're more likely to lean into it.
Yeah, or that elevates us. I mean,
right.
Coming back to the UK for a split second, although I know we're talking about business, but this is relevant and important. For generations, the story of Britain was based on a shared, widely understood, not deeply questioned narrative. And certainly, when you and I were children, that narrative was very firmly in place. What has happened, some for good reasons, some unfortunately brought in by bad state actors, is that story has been almost entirely blown up. And what we are currently lacking is a connective story to replace it. So I was talking to you just before we started about the National Lottery has a predisposition amongst its players to something called win belief. And there's a guy I was seeing who's talking about it, who works with the National Lottery, and he's saying what Britain needs is win belief. And I would say, you stitch that back down, because I was always looking at these conversations through an SME thing. It's like, how can SMEs support this, but also how can SMEs be supported by this? And SMEs that have win belief, I'm not talking about naive optimism, I'm talking about just get all the stuff in the right place, get the strategy right, get the tools in place, systems, processes, all of that. You've got to have win belief. If you don't have win belief, you ain't going nowhere. And that's what good stories do, is they can create that sort of bonded sense of win belief.
Yeah. And so what is winning? Winning could be good people doing good things for good results.
Doesn't have to be though, does it?
Great people doing great things for great results.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that win belief and belief systems. And that's the other thing that I think interests me when we talk about stories that can be relatable, that we relate to, because we tend to gravitate towards people or things that share beliefs and principles. And therefore those beliefs.
You say we shouldn't, of course, should we?
What? So
because it's good to challenge ourselves.
Okay, yeah, good to challenge ourselves. And yet we love a tribe, don't we?
Yeah, we do. We do, and that's fine. And that is belonging. So I was being slightly playful there, but it is important that the tribe does not become so tribal that we can't see beyond it, because then that's very
we don't want it limiting,
excluding.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're absolutely right. The idea of a belief system that is limiting would be something that we shouldn't just stand for and accept. We should challenge.
Exactly. So can we riff on beliefs for a tick? Because obviously, I values, beliefs, principles. I mean, last time I'm sure I said that when I'm working with people, individuals, about what their principles are, the starting place is always going to be, my values are so and so, and they'll say stuff like hard work, whatever. And then, of course, the question that immediately has to come from that is, that's interesting. Where does that come from? And I use hard work as the specific example, because that's just the one which always reveals itself beautifully quickly, because they'll go, my dad used to. And you're like, that's not a value, that's a belief. And beliefs are great, but beliefs can be very limiting. So what you need to be able to do is you need to be able to dip below those, or further down into actually what decisions do you need to make to really capitalize on the beliefs that work for you and to minimize the negative impact of the beliefs that limit you. But then funnily enough, it's almost like when we talk about organizational beliefs or, even personal beliefs. So I have a belief that I state, which is that everything good should flourish.
Right.
That's not one of my values. It's just something that to me is so fundamentally, that just makes such sense. It's negative is the fact that things which are not good should not flourish. So you have to be able to chop out the stuff that isn't good in order to support the good. So that belief is something that my values help me to deliver. So, as always, there are words which don't help. The semantics of this are actually can be quite unhelpful.
Well, I love and I definitely advocate this idea of challenging the beliefs that you might have.
Yeah.
So, we talked before about the common belief in business that people buy from people.
Mm.
And of course, sometimes that is true.
Mm.
And equally, sometimes that sentence isn't long enough and there's loads more to unpack there. And if
Particularly now.
Right. And if we just hold it as a single sentence that doesn't capture everything, then it becomes a limiting belief in the sense that we don't have behavior that follows.
Mm.
I do also completely agree that the idea of beliefs and principles sit separately, although aligned with the values. And the values then, of course, act as your sort of playbook, your guide to make sure that you are on track. But
Mhm.
there are far more beliefs and principles that sit beneath the surface of all of that. How do we know what our beliefs are? You just said a couple there that are very much yours and you know them and you probably say them regularly and therefore reinforce them.
So these are the guiding beliefs, not the
Right.
limiting ones. Yeah,
Yes.
it's interesting. Oh, goodness. I mean, because I'm so completely fascinated by it and I'm so compelled by it and I know the difference it makes. And I know
Yeah.
that, today is the 4th anniversary of us MBOing our business, the
Yeah.
3 of its senior leadership team. That was able to come about because we had absolute clarity about our organizational values, our organizational purpose, and everyone grew exponentially quickly
Yeah.
in the light of that awareness to the point where, 3 people became absolutely ready to take it over.
Yeah.
So, I've seen that in my, blood, sweat and tears. I've been there. I've done that. I've seen it work in countless other organizations as well. But to come back to your question of how we know things are our belief, you've got to try it. You've got to sort of say, this feels vaguely right. Like anything, like any new regimen, like exercise.
Yeah.
You try things. I want to get fitter. Great. What's going to work for you? Might be yoga, might be dancing, might be football, might be running, might be mountain climbing.
Mm.
It's going to be, you've got to give them all a bit of a try.
Mm.
You'll know the ones that don't work for you.
And that describes wonderfully the idea of self-belief and reinforcing self-belief. What was it the Romans used to say? Give me the boy at 7 and I'll show you the man.
Yeah, yeah.
And the reason that they said that is because that, again, statistics and psychology and can convince me otherwise. I don't know what the actual stats are, but they'll say that 70% of a human's beliefs are formed by the
Yeah.
time they reach 7 years old.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, so the question of how do we know what it is that we believe, not how do we double down on self-belief, how do we know what it is we believe?
And why?
And you've just said you are intensely curious, you're fascinated by it.
Yeah.
And in being fascinated about it, you will articulate it, you'll talk about it. And therefore others will hear what you believe because you
Exactly.
say those things out loud.
But the fundamental thing here is, so you can go through life with a very clear set of beliefs
Mm,
if you do not challenge whether they're beneficial to you.
right.
Some of those beliefs will hold you back. I am very aware of beliefs that I held dear and still to a degree honor, but which really helped me back. Super helped me back.
Mm,
And that doesn't allow you to support the people around you. That doesn't allow you to do your civic duty. That doesn't allow you to do your job as as an employer
mm,
or as a member of a team or, member of a community, member of a
yeah.
family. So it's really, really helpful more than anything else, I would say.
To challenge
If we talk
them.
about the personal stuff, is to question. It's very easy. You don't have to, it's not hard. You have to go, where does that come from? And the root of where that, we're back to stories, aren't we? We're back to funding. Where does it come from? Was that a good thing? Because
Yeah.
actually often beliefs, so one of my beliefs that I had, which I've managed to move on from, was based on one of my parents who had a very clear stated value and never lived by it. What does that tell a child?
Mm,
And at the time, you don't know because you're not going, oh, that's interesting. They're saying something, they're doing something else. That's really going to screw me up.
mm,
You just experience it. And it's only as an adult that you look back at it and you go, oh, look at those steps I took. I look at those choices I made. I look at those decisions. And I now recognize that that's related to the impact of that thing that happened. And by the way, it can lead to the good. It doesn't all have to be sort of,
yeah.
a child called it. Even good things sometimes. See, let's say we're given loads of gifts. I was never showered with gifts as a child, but I imagine if you are showered with gifts as a child, the fact that as an adult, it's not so easy
Mm,
must be horrifying.
yeah.
It hasn't been helpful. So it's the first step is always to go, where does that come
Where does
from
it
and
come from
why?
and why?
Why? Yeah.
And being intensely curious at all times.
Yes,
So
definitely.
there are some curious beliefs that I hear all the time, and that others will see, of course, even in their businesses. That and they could each explore why do they hold that belief? Where did it come from? Who
Yeah.
started it?
Yeah.
And it will have been in a story or a statement,
Yes, they
perhaps
will.
it from family growing up. Things like it being rude to talk about money.
Yes. Isn't
That's
that interesting?
Well, that's really fascinating, isn't
Yeah.
it? So the belief that it's rude to talk about money. Fast forward into a world where you're a business owner and you've got salespeople who need to talk about the price and all of that, and that's going to fundamentally limit them in the way that they go about talking about
Yes.
something that they've been told is rude.
Yes.
Then there's another one of so hard work, right?
Mm.
So hard work is a principle, a value, a belief that you will live by. If you do good things, you put the effort in, you'll get good rewards,
Mm.
and there could be an assumption, and because of stories that are told, if you recruit the right people and you pay them a good wage,
They
they'll
will
work hard
slog.
for you.
They will slog like pit ponies.
Right.
Yeah.
And yet, how many business leaders across the land right now are frustrated that they're good people who they have recruited because they were great and they're paying them a great wage, often more than maybe the rest of the market is paying, are not slogging their guts out
Yeah.
and working really, really hard for them because the stories elsewhere in the business aren't strong enough.
No, that's a really interesting point. And I think, the hard work one, going back to that, is really interesting because, of course, ultimately it's better to achieve your objectives in the sort of, by the quickest route possible. So hard work, normally if I'm with someone who goes hard work is one of my values, we generally manage to get them somewhere else fairly quickly.
Yeah.
But some people, including my own husband, will go, no, I judge myself on how hard I work. And that is the thing. It's not the outcome. I mean, he's very, he achieves wonderful things. But nonetheless, what he's really holding himself to account against is actually really how hard he works. So amongst my personal values, there are two which help me to sort of navigate that. And that's what we need to do with values. So the two that help me navigate is, one is make the effort. So make the effort says work hard, wrap things up with a bow, make the effort.
Yeah.
Put the hours in, slog.
Yeah.
You know me, I do.
100%.
But the other one is,
I see the selfies every day from another train station.
it's a lot of hard work taking all those selfies on train stations.
I mean, some might think you're just a train spotter.
I live on a train station. I know, it's great. The stats on train station selfies are ridiculous. Anyway, the other one, the one that counterbalances that and helps me to manage it well is know what matters. Because ultimately, you do what you need to do to achieve what you need to achieve. There's no point doing extra that isn't going to make any better impact. If it's going to make better impact, you should definitely do the extra.
Yeah.
But know what matters. So the benefit of corporate values, I will always, when I'm working with organizations, we will always wrap it up in a narrative. When I'm working with individuals, we will always wrap it up in a narrative. I also come up with a little title. So a guy I worked with recently, we called him the human pebble because he does, he keeps himself to himself, but wherever you drop him, there are massive ripples. There was another one who had this sort of balance of, the impact he made on society and his intense, raging personal ambition. And it was that sort of balance. So it's really good to sort of build those narratives around, but it's absolutely in support of principles that help you to achieve what you need to achieve and not just swoosh in the direction of the most convincing current narrative.
Yeah. And it's keeping you on track rather than being dragged off and in different directions. And those different directions can be really appealing. And that's part of the challenge.
Fireflies. Oh,
right. Yeah.
All the fun stuff.
Exactly.
All the fun
and
stuff.
I'm an epic squirrel. You know this
yes,
of me. If something is exciting and shiny, I'm
you're going to have a go.
Exactly.
You're going to go and have a look at it.
I want to come back to something that you said a moment ago. Your 4-year anniversary today of when you
when we
the start of the
MBO'd
MBO journey, right?
Yeah.
And that's really curious because you talked about that was only possible because you'd built an organization that had so much clarity that its senior leaders grew within it to the point that they became the successors naturally and have taken it on to do great things because of where it was and because of the journey that it can continue on. And that clarity mattered. I know you well, and I imagine the stories you told on that journey that inspired those people to be the great successors that they've become were great, were incredible. So storytelling is a talent, it's a gift, and it's not necessarily a finessed gift in everyone. The thing I always find fascinating is in any business, the leaders need to be great storytellers for clarity, for inspiration, for guiding, through empowering, through influencing. Come back to that word again. What if they're not? Because it's true that if we're not leading our business, there isn't a business that doesn't have a leader. It's just that the leader isn't top
leading.
of the it's someone else will lead in the absence of you.
It's interesting, isn't it? Again, sort of another one, which obviously because of the world I work in, the subject of leadership values, leadership principles, leadership personality types come up a lot, and I will always come down to the fact it's better to be yourself. So as a leader and as an organization, if you're not Apple, or Google or Amazon or whoever else you think you want to be, Patagonia, then you're not. You're you.
Yeah.
So the very best, and if you are not as a leader, I don't know, who's the most charismatic, inspiring leader you can think of?
Oh,
Give me a name.
no, that's too difficult.
Okay, fine.
Right. It's charismatic and inspiring leader of all time. Of all time?
Yeah, go for it.
So this is, I go into contra mode here.
Alexander the Great.
Okay,
Come on.
brilliant.
If you're not Alexander the Great,
Okay.
then
But did
you.
he call himself the Great, by the way? Or did someone else say he was the Great? I struggle
I'm
with
not
this.
a historian.
That's
I don't know. Anyway, I don't know.
Squirrel?
Yeah, squirrel.
Right.
If that's not what you're like, and if your leadership personality is not that you are, really good at stating the vision, really concerned about equality, really concerned about global impact. If that's not you, don't pretend.
Right.
Don't pretend, because do you know what? Some quiet leaders are really good. Some quiet leaders are trusted, respected, and maybe they won't be out there, booming away. Maybe people will come to them, but maybe people gravitate to them, because sometimes that still small voice of calm in the middle of things, dependent upon the organization, is
I
wonderful.
wonder how many of those quieter leaders have storytellers on their top team.
Well, and I think you would need that. I think you would need, and actually partially, if you cannot speak for yourself in that respect, then probably people need to explain that you're a quiet leader and that is your leadership quality. I think it would be harder. I have to say, I do think it would be harder. I mean, there is no doubt at all that there are certain personality types, there are certain values that people hold that make them more box ready for the leadership role, I would say.
And so skill set is skill set, competency is competency. All of those things can be trained. Some of those things are much more natural to others.
Yeah,
and
it's just easier. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big believer of filling your blind spots with the team and not necessarily, slogging away to try and upskill something that's just never going to be your forte.
No, exactly.
And so, beliefs, principles, they're there. If they're articulated, they're much stronger and much more powerful, because we can then challenge the ones that don't work.
Yeah.
Values are slightly easier to anchor into once you've done the work. Right.
Well, that's why you do it.
Exactly.
Because again, and a common sort of pushback that I'll encounter is people going, "Oh no, we don't need to look into our values, because intuitively we just sense them." And you go, "That, do you know how hard that makes life?"
Yeah.
Express them, because then everyone else knows what's expected of them as well.
Yes.
And also, when you are in the really difficult situation that we will have talked about before, where suddenly you're rabbit in headlights, fight, flight, freeze. I can't remember what my gut instinct is telling me in that moment, because it's frozen.
Yeah.
I need the words. Give me the words.
Expressing them, and that's part of the storytelling. Like expressing them repeatedly. Those people that work in digital marketing would talk about SEO and the keywords that you need in the stories that you write.
They are keywords. So much of this is exactly. Keywords. Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Values have to be keywords in the stories that you tell.
Yes.
Right. And principles need to be there and understood, and beliefs have to be articulated and challenged where possible.
Because then everyone understands them. Because actually, let's go back to the leader as narrator. Yeah, storyteller. The leader is storyteller.
Yeah.
Let's say, for the sake of argument, that a good leader is probably also a good storyteller. It's just much easier that way. And
I'm an idealist, so I just think make that statement, put it in the job description.
Exactly. I would say in my role at the business that I owned before I was doing this, storytelling to team, storytelling to clients, storytelling with clients. I mean, we're a comms agency, so a lot of it was storytelling.
Yeah.
Storytelling within our community, because we were based in a very counterintuitive place. And we were partially there so we could contribute to the community, but also because we were there, we should contribute to the community. And a lot of that was about storytelling in terms of the opportunities in this place, what it's like to belong in this place, where this place is going, why other people would like to be here.
Oh,
yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
Okay.
Where it's going.
Yeah.
Where it's going is the destination.
Yes.
And you're not there till you're there. And you might never get there. No. And even when you get there, the destination might be very different to what you thought it was going to be.
That happens. That's vision.
Right. Yeah. We live and we experience in the now, not the then.
Yes.
Right.
That's why you need purpose as well as vision.
Right.
So when I frame, so back to the core model at the very heart of everything I do is this thing called active ethos. Thank you. As you know, you've done your homework. Well done.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah. active ethos is predicated on the fact that when we talk about values, they should be stretch values, because stretch values help you make decisions that will help you be your best.
Yeah.
That's kind of useful. In a, let's say, corporate environment, it's good to have people who are being their best. It's good to have a company that is being its best. But then equally, they'd be like, yeah, why? So what? I'm turning up. Can I just get on with my job? Not another management initiative. I wholeheartedly get that. So you need to give people a reason to care. You need to give them motivation. Then you have vision. That is the destination, the moonshot, the I'm putting a man on the moon thing.
Yeah.
The storytelling, the really exciting, the really,
Yeah.
oh, can we? Bit scary, bit of a BHAG. But again, that's a bit of so what, to be absolutely honest, because it could just be a very convincing, but ultimately naive story.
Yeah. Yeah.
It doesn't take long before people are going to start veering away from that. So this is why purpose is so important, which is, okay, at the very heart of it, why are we here? What are we here to do? And I don't want to see 3 long paragraphs of blah, 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 words like integrity and, all of this stuff. I want to see something very, very specific, articulated in as few words as possible that still strikes a chord and makes sense.
Yeah. And all articulated in as few words as possible.
But the but makes sense, because just saying integrity, going back to the values words, that doesn't make sense.
No.
So you need to express people speak in sentences and phrases. People don't speak in single words. So that's how it needs to be.
You should meet some of the kids that go to the local school. I think they only have single words. And some of those aren't words, they're just sounds.
No, I know. Well, yeah.
Right.
But forgetting them.
Alienating our Gen Z and Gen Alpha audience. Now,
I
maybe.
know.
I don't know.
It's that huge audience that we have. So again, at this thing I was at last week, the guy who has the dubious pleasure of being the chief executive of the post office was there in a session that was about rebuilding trust. And he was saying, I know, big ask, but they can do it. And I know how they can do it. And he said there are 3 aspects to trust. And one of them is, I can't remember exactly the words he used, but one of them is basically having a plan. The other one, having a place that you're taking it to, having a clear plan to get there. And the other one is track record. And he said, we've got no track record because the longest any member of the senior leadership team has been in the role is 14 months. Everybody is new. Senior leadership team is new. Board is new. Everybody at that kind of real senior leadership level who's in charge of this rebuild is completely new. So they have no track record. So he said, the only choice we have is to express where we're going, express how we're going to get there, and then to just get on with it.
Yeah.
It was
and it's the
utterly
getting on with
fascinating.
it that's the now experience, If only they can see what's on the horizon. Too soon for the Royal Mail. Maybe not.
Well, no, so it's post office. It's different. But what's really interesting about them? It's post office. Yeah. So what's really interesting about them is, of course, so I don't know about you, but where we live, we don't have banks anymore because Lloyd's, this is one of my common gripes. Lloyd's has this whole ad about being by our side, but they left our town. They've left a lot of towns. So they're not by my side, even if they are in my pocket. Lloyd's left, Barclays left, whatever. All these things are leaving. There at the centre of it all is the post office with, 3 or 4 ladies who work in there who go, oh, how's your daughter? And oh, how are you? And oh, that parcel you sent off last week. They know everybody. That people go into the post office just to see someone. You have people who are lonely, who live on their own, and they're going into the post office so that they have a conversation that day. Actually, isn't that awful? But thank goodness the post office is there.
Yeah.
So what these people have absolutely rightly identified is nobody's argument was ever with their post office.
No.
It was with the post office.
Right.
So they have this amazing thing. I hope they don't cheapen it. It's very easy to cheapen, your post office. It's very easy to do that cheaply. I hope they do it well. They're absolutely right, because my relationship and I would fight tooth and nail to keep that place open. So they're very lucky that they have that amazing emotional asset.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
So there's so much more we could unpack in this
always.
This world of telling
Episode
stories. 3. Because it's episode 1 was all about values and the importance of that and why they need to be nutritional and not junk, and why often they just don't work because they are just these words on a wall, keywords that have no substance. Now we're talking about narrative and the importance of narrative.
You can't build any of this up without the narrative.
Yeah, and storytelling as a skill set at leadership level.
Yes.
And a skill set that if we don't have it, we need to find it and find it quick.
I know.
Because those stories have to be told.
Can I tell you a story?
Yes.
Right. I used to, and this will surprise you, I used to be petrified of what is called public speaking.
Right.
I mean,
You're in the
literally,
top however many percent. It's
yeah,
like
I
the
know.
number one, right?
Disco,
Glossophobia.
disco legs, like
Right.
just terrified of it. I wouldn't do it. I would never do it. And I thought, this is ridiculous. I'm running a company. I
Mm.
should be able to stand up and I would do round tables. I would do all sorts of things, platforms, whatever. I just wouldn't do the speech. And now, of course, a lot of how I make a living is by doing that. And it came about because I was asked to represent business for young people in our region. So I'm in the east of England, who were just coming out of school and were just going to be moving into the workforce. And this was about galvanizing business to open their doors to young people, to say, give them a chance, give them work experience, get to know the schools. Business is contingent on you to make the effort. You have to be going out to the schools and offering this stuff. And I was like, well, I have to do it because it's not for me now. This is for the young people. It's for the young people. So I have to do it. And the thing that got me through it was storytelling, because at that point, my young person, who is now 16, was a baby. He was 2. And we used to read about 4 stories together every night. And I loved it. And he enjoyed it. And there is a comfort and there is a rhythm and there is an informality and closeness in telling a story. So the way I got myself up on that stage was I went up and I told a story. And it was brilliant. And literally, it was one of those things where people stood up and cheered it. And I was like, oh, I should have done this years ago. But the only thing that could move me forward. So if you are someone who is, as you say, like everyone is scared of public speaking. If you are someone who in your role needs to do it, telling a story will get you through it. I guarantee it. It's a humdinger of a story.
And maybe that's the challenge. So for listeners and viewers
Should we do this?
of this
Set a
podcast,
challenge.
why don't we each go away and write the story?
And then share it.
That if we told it to our people, our team, our business, and even assume at times that the customer's in the room too and they're listening, right?
Our customers care. Sorry, this is
Yeah.
brand. Sorry, just very
Right, it's a
quickly before
brand
you
story.
finish. So you say people buy from people,
Yeah.
but obviously a lot of the time people are not in front of people to buy from.
Mm.
So somehow what brands have to do is they have to create that relationship, that trust, that loyalty, that sense of belonging that you would normally have got with Fred down at the post office. Brands do it brilliantly
They do.
by telling stories.
And they tell those stories in
Yeah.
such a way that others retell them.
Yes, exactly.
So the stories matter. The challenge to our listeners and viewers is to write the story. It doesn't have to be a long story, but
Should be short.
Yeah, a short story.
Beginning, middle, end.
Right.
Hero, villain.
Nice.
Yeah, nice.
And maybe it's a story that's got a cliffhanger, like what's coming next. Maybe it's a story that has a happy ending. Maybe it's a story that makes you feel like you've got to get up and do something.
I think we need to do a competition.
Shall we?
Let's do a competition.
All right, let's do it.
Stories are made to be shared, aren't they?
So stories are powerful. Stories matter. The narrative is so, so important. It's integral when it comes to values. It's part of the values mindset. It's part of the win belief.
Win belief.
Right. And everything that we've talked about today is just rooted in making people much more visible and heard within your brands and within your organizations.
And internally.
Yeah.
Actually, because you will, as people and as an organization, if you get your story clear, you actually understand yourself a lot better.
I'm intensely curious at what the next chapter of this series of books is going to be in our conversation.
I dread to think.
For now, that's a wonderful way to close off this episode and say, Erika, thank you so much again for joining us. The end.
The end.